Hello, I'm William Hildebrandt. Welcome to Access Asia. Coming up, as COVID eases, Japan starts to open up its borders. We'll take a look at the economic impact of the pandemic and whether the Prime Minister's bet will pay off. A chicken rice crisis. After Malaysia cuts exports of the fowl, people in Singapore wonder if their country's poultry supplies are enough. And Thailand is praised for its conservation of wild tigers, but criticized for its treatment of captive ones. Activists say money is the problem. Well, Japan was one of the last countries in the world to keep its borders shut to foreign tourists because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but that is slowly changing. The government is cautiously taking steps to revive tourism. The economy needs a lifeline. Airlines, hotels, and restaurants have laid off workers as demand plunged. But in a crucial election year and with the border restrictions popular among voters, it's a tricky balancing act for Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Well, for more, let's speak to Professor Seijiro Takeshita from the University of Shizuoka. Hello, Professor, and thank you for speaking to France 24. First of all, tourism, a major part of Japan's economy. What will the easing of these border restrictions mean for the country?
Well, it would open up what many had hoped to be the white knight of the current stagnant situation in the Japanese economy, something that brings light, which is the inbound tourism, which had exceeded all expectation before the corona incident. So many people are hoping that this would be a breakthrough to appeal New Japan to the rest of the world. And also, many people hope that it would mitigate the current trend of the weakening of the yen.
Yeah, you mentioned many people hope this, but some polls have shown that there's widespread support for these tight border restrictions.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why the Japanese government can continue and has been able to continue this restriction is because they have the full backing of the people. The Japanese media and the people in Japan are very much for backing up the government's decision to basically ward off, or restrict people by their nationality, which is very strange because I don't think coronaviruses act upon the difference of the nationality. But this comes back from the very conservative nature of the Japanese, who are very, very risk avoidant. And that's one of the reasons why they would like to basically support any measures that could possibly cause any resurgence of this coronavirus.
And there's some understanding about that sentiment, but do you think that maybe border restrictions like these only reinforce stereotypes like Japan being suspicious of foreigners?
Absolutely. It's very negative. I think it doesn't have any actual meaning. And secondly, it gives out a very bad negative image. And I think because of introduction of SDGs, etc., what we should be doing is going on the totally opposite direction, which is opening up. Let's face it. If you look at the statistics from Landstat, it's very clear the Japanese is still very much excessively conservative. The Japanese who are willing to work with, the non-Japanese or the foreigners remain only 44%, which is way below the average of 79.4, which tells you there still is this very excessive conservativeness, which still lies amongst the Japanese people. And therefore, we have this very unfortunate, prolongment, which had been holding back the foreigners for such a long time.
Does the Prime Minister in that regard deserve some criticism? I mean, Kishida just had his highest approval ratings since taking office late last year. So could he not influence his base to maybe embrace opening up the country?
I think it is well calculated in the sense that he would get more support by abiding by this excessively stringent measures, which from a global perspective is very negative, as we just agreed. And also, it's awkward because it's based on very unscientific background. The coronavirus do not act depending on the nationality. So, if we continue this, it would be a sheer embarrassment for the people, and certainly not something that would, keep us away from corona, but, increase a very negative side of the reputation.
Yeah, and of course, it's happening before next month's very crucial upper house elections.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, again, it goes back to the conservatism that I was just talking to you about. It's not only the people or the corporations, but it's also the government as well. And they'd like to sustain this, popularity that they're getting, of course, the LDP. And, they have been making some very good measures and to cope with this, negative situation on this COVID-19 issue. But, as far as this foreign policy is concerned, it's very negative. And also, if you look at, for example, the number of people that we're getting from Ukraine is very laughably low. And we're the third largest economy, second largest in the free world. And, it's very clear that we're not doing enough. These things, these international positioning of Japan should be talked about a lot more. In other words, how we are being looked on, how we're being perceived, and what is our connotation that people are getting, because it goes back to your very first question, which is tourism. People do make their decision on where they want to go based very much on the perception they have of that country.
All right, Professor, thank you very much for your time and your analysis. Professor Seijiro Takeshita. Well, recent protectionist measures in Asia over food security have included a ban on wheat exports in India and a temporary halt to palm oil shipments in Indonesia. Malaysia, too, has taken action because of shortages. Recently, it banned live chicken exports, and that has hit neighboring Singapore. Nick Rushworth has more.
Lunchtime in Singapore, and what better than a serving of chicken rice, a local favorite? Except that supplies of chicken right now are not guaranteed. Neighboring Malaysia, which supplies a third of Singapore's poultry, has banned exports. The ban has made Singaporeans think twice about something they take for granted.
Even though I'm not really a chicken rice person, it's just that sometimes you do have the craving.
It's just unfortunate that Singapore is very dependent on food resources from elsewhere, and we just have to adapt.
Malaysia's export ban of 3.6 million chickens per month is the latest protectionist move in Asia, aimed at tackling domestic shortages and curbing inflation. The ban will end once prices and production have stabilized, which could be a matter of weeks. One business owner in this Kuala Lumpur market said action was needed.
I hope the government does more and thinks about people like us. We do business. Chicken prices are up. Pity the chicken butchers too here in the market. They're affected as well.
One of the main problems is the current high price of chicken feed. It's typically made up of grain and soybean, which Malaysia imports. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine and uncertain weather patterns have created a global shortage.
There's a schedule changes due to slow growth of chicken. The slow growth of chicken is affected by feed quality as well. The rising cost of feed material from abroad has forced some feed millers to adjust their feed level.
Chicken rice without chicken is like McDonald's without burgers. Singapore, to fill the gap, is sourcing its supplies from Thailand, Australia, the USA, and Brazil.
Well, Thailand is one of a handful of Asian countries where tigers still roam in the wild. In recent years, the country has been praised for setting up cameras and patrols to help protect the animals. But there's also a flip side, so-called tiger tourism, in which activists say captive animals are being mistreated. Wasim Cornet and James Mulholland have more.
Live feeds of tigers in the wild in Thailand. It's one of the only countries in the world where their numbers continue to grow. At this nature reserve in the west of the country, 21 teams of rangers are in charge of helping protect the tigers that live here.
These are tiger tracks. He scratched on the earth here to mark his territory. This means it's now his hunting area.
The time of the discovery and the GPS coordinates are all carefully recorded.
Every team has to report evidence of tiger activity. It allows us to pinpoint specific areas where we need to deploy more patrols and better protect them.
The rangers aren't alone. 500 cameras have been set up to keep an eye on tigers and poachers. These two armed men were arrested soon after they were spotted. Rangers say that in this wildlife reserve, the number of tigers has doubled in 12 years. In tourist areas such as here in Pattaya, theme parks like this tiger park have cropped up.
Good for you. Sit down, sit down. Sit down again? Yeah, sit down again. Another hand, you can touch the belly. Like this? Yeah.
Visitors who cough up about 50 euros get as many pictures as they want with tigers of all ages.
I've seen tigers on TV before, but this is the first time I've been able to touch them. They're so cute. It's better that they're here in cages. Out in the wild, they scare people.
For you, it's normal to play with tigers?
Normal to play? You know, I am actually a dog lover. I am actually an animal lover. So because if I have to spend whole day here, I spend.
Here, as soon as tigers turn 2 or 3 months old, they're treated like domestic pets. Their claws are filed down, but they're not drugged, according to management, who insist that they're looking after the well-being of the animals and that this is not just a business.
Our main goal to save population of tiger and let people to be closer with them, to learn how they can live.
But you got the impression to save the tigers?
Yes, because there are more and more tigers coming. Now we open new park in Phuket.
But for this wildlife activist, it doesn't add up.
It's wildlife exploitation. It's just purely money, money, money. We have more than 2,000 tigers in captivity in Thailand at the moment, while we have maybe just over 200 or just under 200 in the wild. For what? It does not serve conservation at all. And I think as Thailand is doing such a great job in protecting the wild population of tigers, we should get rid of this.
Conservation or exploitation? The ethical question over tiger tourism is, for now, not one that Thailand wants to tackle.
Well, that's it for this edition. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.
In 1990, a Russian-speaking minority in Moldova proclaimed its independence and formed the Republic of Transnistria. With reminders of the country's Soviet past everywhere, the Kremlin still holds the reins of power.
Я бы очень хотел, чтобы наступил мир, согласие. В результате Приднестровская Молдавская Республика либо стала независимой, а в лучшем варианте стала частью Российской Федерации.
In a troubled geopolitical context, divisions within the self-proclaimed republic are growing.
Je ne suis pas contre les Russes, je suis contre la mort. Mais ce sont les Russes qui font mourir les gens.
Watch Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.